Coming up today on Philadelphia Eagles Now, we have a new Maxx Crosby trade update. Nick Sirianni offered his good buddy Frank Reich a position with the Philadelphia Eagles, and with that, Frank Reich is now the new offensive coordinator under Aaron Glenn for the New York Jets. The Jets need a quarterback. Could they trade for Tanner McKee? Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network pitches a potential McKee trade to the Jets. We'll get into that as well. First, hope you're all getting set to have a fantastic weekend. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want daily and year-round coverage of the Eagles. I'm flying out to Indianapolis on Sunday for the 2026 NFL Combine. Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman are going to talk on Tuesday. There's a lot to discuss. They haven't publicly talked about the hire of Sean Mannion as their new offensive coordinator. The Eagles have two pass rushers on the roster. Is Philadelphia going to make a move for a pass rusher this offseason via a trade? Make a trade for a player like Maxx Crosby. And there are some big offseason question marks around the Eagles. How do they rebuild the offensive line? What do they do with Jalen Phillips, Nakobe Dean, Reed Blankenship? We're going to talk about all of that and more with the general manager of the Eagles and the head coach of the Eagles coming up on Tuesday. Be on the lookout for that right here, exclusively on Philadelphia Eagles Now. So NFL teams cannot officially make trades until the new league year begins on March 11, but they can start negotiating and agreeing to terms before then. I remember being at the NFL Combine last year, and we were driving back from Indianapolis. We didn't fly last year, and Deebo Samuel, for instance, got traded from the 49ers to the Commanders. Now, that move was not official until the new league year got underway, but the terms of the deal were agreed upon for San Francisco and Washington. So we could see some trades go down next week. And when you think about the NFL Combine, again, we're going to Indianapolis next week. Howie, Nick speaking on Tuesday. It's pretty much a job conference for the NFL. You have all of these general managers, most coaches, some owners, a lot of agents, a lot of players, of course, draft prospects. That's where a lot of the focus is, all descending upon Indianapolis. And all these GMs, they don't have to get on a phone necessarily to call another GM. They can just link up, have face-to-face conversations. Agents can converse with GMs as well. And a lot of these moves can start to gain traction and take place. Now, officially, contracts aren't supposed to be worked out ahead of free agency, but we know that tampering kind of exists. But the point here that I'm making is that trade conversations are going to start to really pick up steam next week in Indy, and it is going to be an NFL rumors machine. Also, a lot of media members like yours truly going to be there. And I will see all of the top NFL insiders and people who cover the NFL. And I'll do my best to get some of those people on the show like we've done in the past. Greg Cosell, for instance, from Super Bowl Radio Row, he was phenomenal. Maxx Crosby's name is going to come up. And the Eagles have been and will continue to be linked to Maxx Crosby. The situation between Crosby and the Raiders, of course, is very fluid. He signed a 3-year, $106.5 million contract extension last offseason. At that specific time, when he put pen to paper, that made him the highest paid non-quarterback in the National Football League. He was overtaken by TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, but at that time, he became the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. And Maxx Crosby, of course, was shut down by the Raiders the final 2 weeks of the season because of a knee injury that required surgery in January, a meniscus injury for Maxx Crosby. So he was unhappy about that. He stormed away from the facility. He's talked about this publicly. He's also been determined, playing for the cellar dweller Raiders, to win at the highest level. Well, what are the Raiders doing right now? They have the number 1 overall pick. They're going to draft Fernando Mendoza. They just hired a new head coach in Klint Kubiak after the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. And the Raiders are starting to rebuild that roster a little bit, as they should. It makes sense for the Raiders to rebuild. So if you're the Raiders, does it make sense to rebuild with a soon-to-be 29-year-old pass rusher coming off a meniscus surgery, who's getting a little bit older and is very expensive? And if they traded him away for really premium draft compensation, that helps their rebuild. So a trade could be beneficial for both sides. Crosby gets an opportunity to play for a true contender. Maybe it could be for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then the Raiders would have a dead cap hit of $5.1 million, but they would save nearly $31 million according to Over the Cap. Las Vegas could also use the draft capital that they get back in the Maxx Crosby trade to rebuild. What do you think Howie Roseman would do if the Eagles were in the situation of the Raiders? I honestly think he might trade a player like Maxx Crosby away because it streamlines your rebuilding process. The Raiders roster is very barren. They need as many high-quality players as they can get. And so that brings us to this new update from Adam Schefter. According to Shefty, the Raiders want 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. That's a lot. Would Howie Roseman be willing to give that up for Maxx Crosby? Crosby's great. He's been one of the best players in the NFL since 2019. He has exceeded all expectations given his draft slot in the, 5th round. But while Maxx Crosby is great, 2 first-round picks plus potential additional assets, that is a steep and exorbitant asking price. And Howie Roseman last year, when I was at the NFL Combine, a lot of the chatter was that Howie was very interested in Myles Garrett. What did Myles Garrett ended up doing in 2025? He won Defensive Player of the Year, and he set the single-season record for sacks in a season. I would give up 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett. I would do it right now. Get Andrew Berry on the phone. He used to work under Howie Roseman. If I could be on that phone, on that line, I'm getting that deal done. While Maxx Crosby is a really good player, he is not Myles Garrett. And so there are risks with Crosby where there aren't really many risks with a player like Garrett. Crosby, coming off a meniscus surgery, is going to be 29 in August, has a little bit of an injury history of late. How does his playing style age? When you look at Myles Garrett, especially this time last year when these conversations were real, he looks like Adonis. He looks like a Greek god. Myles Garrett is not only huge as a human being, he's extremely athletic, twitchy, and strong. Maxx Crosby has never really been in that athletic profile. There's a reason why Garrett was the first overall pick and Crosby was drafted late. So how does the playing style of Crosby age? Because a lot of it is on strength, being a pass rush technician, being fundamentally sound, but a lot of it is on effort. And if he loses a little bit of that athleticism, a little bit of that speed, that's a little bit of a concern for me. Of course, there are a lot of pros with Crosby. The pros could outweigh the negatives here. And for the Eagles, they have 2 pass rushers under contract right now. Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt. None of those players are close to Maxx Crosby. But for Howie, they're much more affordable. And they'll be up for contract extensions very soon. For Crosby, there are no questions about his character or his effort as a football player. He's also absolutely elite against the run and getting after the quarterback. And a healthy Crosby, you can make the argument, obviously, is very well worth the risk. And some of these Crosby numbers since coming into the league in 2019, 69.5 sacks, 133 TFLs, 476 pressures, 164 quarterback hits, and a pressure rate of 13%. Let me just bring up Myles Garrett's numbers here real quick to see how he compares since 2019 compared to Crosby. So 2019 until now, Crosby has 105 sacks. 105 sacks since 2019 compared to Crosby's 69.5. Isn't that crazy? He has 128 TFLs. Crosby has 133. and has 192 quarterback hits. Crosby has 164. So some similar numbers, but Myles Garrett is just in a different stratosphere compared to Crosby, which is where, like, okay, forking over 2 first-round picks, you do that for a player like Garrett. You do that for a player like, I don't know, Justin Jefferson. Do you do it for a player like Maxx Crosby? I don't think so, and I don't think I'd make that move. To the other topic that I want to get to, let's talk Frank Reich and Tanner McKee. So Dan Pompei of The Athletic had a feature on Frank Reich, and Frank Reich has had quite the path. He was the Colts head coach, got let go. Panthers head coach, got let go. He was the Stanford interim head coach this past year, and then he signed on with the Jets to be their new offensive coordinator. And Pompei had this feature on Reich. He's still getting paid by the Panthers because the year before the Colts fired him, he signed an extension that the Panthers picked up. They owe him through 2026. After the season at Stanford, Reich, who's 64 years old, could have lived the good life, could have cashed his checks. He could have been an advisor to one of his coaching friends, such as Philadelphia Eagles coach Nick Sirianni, with whom he discussed the possibility a couple months ago. But the Jets presented an opportunity for a comeback, and Reich is all about the comeback. So he'll be their play caller for 2026 under Aaron Glenn. Veteran offensive mind for a Jets team that badly needs it. Here's the thing. Frank Reich is all about the comeback, right? He is very motivated to prove to everybody that he's still got his fastball as an offensive mind at the NFL level calling plays. The Jets don't have a quarterback. And in a very thin quarterback offseason, draft-wise, free agency-wise, who do the Jets go after? Do you draft Ty Simpson with, I think the Jets have the 19th pick as one of their first-rounders? A little bit of a reach. I don't think that he's a plug-and-play guy, and if you play him right away and he's not ready, doesn't have a ton of experience at Alabama, his confidence could be shot. So could the Jets make a trade for a quarterback? Malik Willis is the top free agency option. Aaron Rodgers after that. Trade-wise, Kyler Murray is an option. Tua Tagovailoa is an option. But they're both under hefty contracts, which enters into the equation Tanner McKee. Nick Sirianni has said, Frank Reich is like a brother to me. There's that line of communication. And Daniel Jeremiah said on the Rich Eisen show today that instead of drafting a player like Ty Simpson, should the Jets make a trade for Tanner McKee or maybe Davis Mills of the Houston Texans for a mid-round draft pick? I'd be interested to see what McKee and Frank Reich could do. And Aaron Glenn is on the hot seat. I mean, if this Jets season is a disaster, he's getting fired, which means Frank Reich is getting fired. So the Jets have some pressure to find a quarterback. It cannot be Justin Fields. They signed him to a 2-year, $40 million deal last year. He's not even worth $20 million per year, which is a pretty low contract in a robust quarterback market. He stinks. Can't throw over the middle of the field. Doesn't have any touch, timing, anticipation to his game. Really good athlete. I loved what he did at Ohio State. The college football playoff game that he had and run that he had was incredible. Unfortunately, he went to a Chicago team where he didn't have a lot of coaching stability. Matt Nagy got fired. Matt Eberflus, a joke. And the Bears drafted Caleb Williams #1 because they were so bad. So McKee to the Jets teaming up with Frank Reich. Frank Reich has the relationship with Nick Sirianni, so he has a lot of background on the player. And if the Eagles can get a mid-round pick for Tanner McKee, a 4th rounder, do you value getting that back as compared to McKee going into the final year of his contract, walking after the year, and the Eagles not getting anything? Of course, what would the Eagles do at QB2? Jalen Hurts is QB1. Do you bring back a player like Sam Howell? Do you draft a quarterback early? Do you look at a player like Jacoby Brissett, who Nick Sirianni is familiar with, helped him come up with the idea for the tush push? Zach Wilson is a reclamation project out there. I would like keeping Tanner McKee because quarterback security is very important. I've talked about this. What I think the Eagles should do, give Tanner McKee the Tyson Bagent contract. 2 years, $10 million. Give him a pay bump because the best security that you can have is quarterback security. But if Howie Roseman were to trade Tanner McKee, the Jets do become a pretty good destination for Frank Reich and for McKee. All right. We will have content coming out throughout the weekend. I'll be in Indianapolis starting Sunday. So probably start doing shows from Indy on Monday from Radio Row from the Indianapolis Convention Center. Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman speaking on Tuesday. We'll bring you those interviews right here on the show. Have a phenomenal weekend. As always, go Birds. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you so much for watching.